Township Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, December the 15th, 2020. It's about 6:05 p.m. Everybody could stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We welcome all this evening, and glad to be here to have a meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Been off a little bit. Okay, Mr. Iona, if we could have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Faring.
Here.
Commissioner McMullen.
Here.
Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Gehring.
Here.
Commissioner Grody.
Here.
Okay,
We could have Mr. Westfall as seated for Mrs. Smith.
duly noted. Thank you, Commissioner Westfall.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to take a look at and approve the minutes for the last meeting of August the 4th. Everybody could take a moment to look at that, and then we can entertain a motion. I don't think it was in our electronic packet, so if you want to take a moment to read over it and see if there's any need for any changes or anything. Okay, are there any changes, additions, or deletions? Okay, if we could have a motion to approve, please.
I'll make the motion to approve the, I believe it was the August minutes.
Okay, could we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from August 4th, 2020. Mr. Iona, could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring.
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen.
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall.
Abstain.
Commissioner Gehring.
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes. So the minutes stand as approved. Okay, there is no public address this evening. Our next agenda item is a final development plan, case number ZA 2020-07. Applicant is Redwood USA LLC. The location is 10511 Pippin Road. Mr. Iona, does staff have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Iona. I'll be presenting on behalf of the Planning Department. Again, the application tonight before you is a request for a review and approval of a final development plan to allow for the construction of 130 multifamily residential units on the site in question. The site in question is located along the east side of Pippin Road between Stout and Struble Road. The property contains an approximate area of 49 acres with a lake that has a surface area of approximately 13 acres, which covers approximately 25% or a quarter of the site. There's currently one vehicular access to the site provided from Pippin Road. The configuration of the lake and the wetland areas on the site, as well as the topography, really blocks vehicular access to the land areas to the south and west of the lake. Here you can see an aerial map of the site in question taken in 2019. As you can see, many of the previous improvements on the site for the golf course as well as the putt-putt, and I think there was an accessory playground, have deteriorated, and a lot of the sites grown back to a natural environment. Here's a picture of the site looking across the lake to the west. Here's a picture of the site looking to the site from the east. Here's an additional picture looking across the lake on the site. Here's a picture looking on the site towards the north, towards the high school. Here's an additional photo of one of the existing boundaries. This is the north boundary on the site in question. And then here you can see a photo of the flora and fauna that exist, particularly on the south side of the site in question, but really throughout the site. This slide shows photos of the existing clubhouse. Here's a slide showing the Pippin Road frontage. You can see the existing access point. And then here are photos of that low retainer dam that exists on the site that holds the lake up. The site in question is currently zoned PDR. The areas surrounding the site are currently zoned R6. That's an urban residential zone that permits single-family residential dwellings, two-family residential dwellings, three-family residential dwellings, and four-family residential dwellings. And so where are we today? Well, the plan development process, as you all know, is a two-step process where there's a preliminary development plan submitted that is reviewed by the Zoning Commission. They make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees who takes final action. This development plan, or this specific application, went through that process and was approved earlier this year. Where we are tonight is the application on a final development plan. And this is more of an administrative review where the applicant submits an application, staff does a review, and then the Zoning Commission hears the case and then takes action to, final action to approve or deny. The development conditions from the preliminary development plan are as follows. Number one is that the applicant either one, construct a public sidewalk or secure a waiver from the Board of Trustees for the Pippin Road frontage to make sure the property is in compliance with all the applicable design standards. Number two, that a concrete sidewalk be constructed on both sides of the primary drive, that's that north entry drive from Pippin Road to the first intersection of the private drive. After this, a sidewalk located along one side of the private drive shall be permitted. Number three, that the final development plan include a landscape plan that addresses the preservation of the existing buffer along the north property line, and then that particular consideration be given to providing additional screening and buffering from adjacent residential uses. And then number four, that the final development plan be in keeping with the submission materials submitted during that preliminary development plan. So that would be kind of the site layout, the building materials, the unit mix and amenities. So again, here you can see the project site. It contains a plus or minus 41.9 acres. Again, the lake is about 13 acres, covers approximately 1/4 of the site in question. Here you can see the submitted development plan, and it indicates the construction of 130 multifamily dwelling units on the site. The proposed development plan here tonight does feature a reduction in density of 8 dwelling units from the approved preliminary development plan, which featured a total of 138 dwelling units. The applicant has stated that this reduction pertains to the need to keep the buildings out of the wetland areas on the site, and as such, they had to reduce the number of units on the site. This is a reduction that's permitted as part of this application per section 7.5 of the zoning resolution, which allows for these types of reductions from the preliminary, more concept development plan to this kind of finalized plan that we have here tonight with the final development plan. The unit mix will remain the same. It's going to be all 2-bedroom unit apartments with the exception of the former clubhouse, which will be the one standalone unit on the site. It's going to be 2 bedrooms as well, but it will be a standalone and not attached like many of the other units that exist on the site. Access is still provided from those 3 curb cuts along Pippin Road, and there is still a gazebo for public viewing located off of Pippin Road. And again, you can see the 3 access points here. And then you can see that the gazebo right here. The applicant has submitted a landscape that indicates the following. They've shown the provision of various deciduous and ornamental trees that are planted throughout the site. And those were done in accordance with the preliminary development plan. They also show the provision of bushes and shrubs throughout the site, and they show the preservation of significant natural and open space areas, particularly on the south side of the site in question. And that's all in keeping with the preliminary development plan. I do want to bring up one comment, and that is if you look up here as it pertains to one of the conditions, the applicant has included additional plantings here next to building number 8 along that north property line, and they've added 3 trees there to provide additional buffering and screening from that adjacent single-family residential use. And they also indicate that they will preserve and maintain the buffer along that north property line. I do want to note that the proposed landscape within the site is not a direct requirement of the zoning resolution. If you look at table number 14.1 of the zoning resolution, it doesn't really provide any guidance for screening when you have a PDR adjacent to a residential use. And in fact, PDR is not contained on that table. However, staff is comfortable with the number of plantings on this site, particularly since the zoning resolution doesn't call out for a specific number of plantings. Given the number of plantings that are located throughout the site, staff feels that there is more than enough landscaping and buffering provided within the submitted development plan. Since there is no required screening and buffering, some of the calipers of the trees that are planted are a little smaller than what is permitted within the zoning resolution. I think a lot of them are at about a 2-inch caliper, whereas the zoning resolution requires 2.5. However, again, given the robust amount of open space that is preserved within the development plan and just the number of plantings that's included within the submittal, staff feels that the intent and purpose of the landscape requirements to provide that screening, buffering, and create a high-quality environment within the development has been maintained within the submitted application. The exterior materials of each unit, as in the preliminary development plan, are again composed of brick, masonry, and vinyl. The building exteriors also feature the multiple gable architectural accents, a mixture of the siding materials, as well as the lighting and fencing accents that were submitted within the preliminary development plan. Each unit will feature the 2 bathrooms, 2-car garages attached. There will be a full range of appliances, including the refrigerator, stove, dishwasher, garbage disposals, and in-unit laundry. The units will have vaulted ceilings, granite countertops, and again, they're maintaining the quality that they applied for and promised in the preliminary development plan. And again, here you can see an additional photos of the proposed units. In making their application, the applicant has also indicated the following. As it pertains to the sidewalk, and there was a condition about sidewalk, the applicant has indicated, though it's not shown on the site plan, that they are intending to construct the sidewalk at their cost along Pippin Road, including this the sidewalk necessary to meet condition 1 and condition 2. That condition 2 was that the sidewalk would extend into the development up to a certain point. It was at the first intersection of the private drive on that north section of the development. So again, the applicant, in making their submission, has stated that they do intend to comply with all sidewalk standards, as well as those requirements outlined in condition 1 and condition 2. As it pertains to lighting, the applicant has also stated that all lighting on the site is going to meet Colerain Township requirements and will have no greater than 0-foot candle at the property lines, and that the lighting consists of coach lights at the fence of the garages, a porch light near the front door, a patio light in the rear. Lamp posts will also be located at intersections and parking areas, and again, there will be less than a 0-foot candle reading at the property line. as it pertains to stormwater, and this was an issue that came up at the preliminary development plan stage. The applicant has stated that all stormwater runoff will be controlled so that during heavy rains, events, stormwater will be retained on site and let downstream in a controlled fashion not to exceed the pre-development rates on the site. The applicant further has stated that a permit and outfall structure is regulated and will be inspected by Hamilton County Public Works. In regard to sewer on the site, the applicant has stated that sewer capacity has been verified with Metropolitan Sewer District, or MSD, and that all construction of the sewer line will be inspected and tested by MSD. Of note, the applicant did find a broken manhole off-site and downstream of the future site connection that needs maintenance. And it states that they will be working, with MSD to ensure that all best practices and procedures and applicable rules and regulations are followed on the site. Staff's recommendation is that the Zoning Commission approve the final development plan to allow for the 130 multifamily dwelling units to be constructed on the site. And as additional staff comments, I do want to note that approval of the development plan does lock in this site plan and all corresponding proposal information. So, the materials and siding and unit layout and type of units, just everything in the site plan, the landscape plan, and all that gets locked in if this is to be approved. Once approved through a final action by you all at the final development plan stage, any deviation or change must follow the review and approval process as outlined in section 4.5 of the zoning resolution. So what you see here tonight, is what you get. And any deviation from that will require an amendment in accordance with section 4.5 of the zoning resolution. So that's all for my staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions or comments for Mr. Iona?
I just have one. I think it was 5 acres, the southeast corner of the property behind the church. Do we know what's going on with that? Because they were talking a couple different proposals with that.
So I think that's a question better addressed by the applicant. Where we had left it with the preliminary development plan was that this plan is what the plan is. Any deviation from that to sell or transfer or do something else with that would require, them to come back through that section 4.5 and amend the plan.
Okay,
Right now,
so we
it's
would see that before something was done with that.
Yes, correct. And, exactly. And that is something that right now is identified as open space, preserved open space. And any change to that would require that, without having the regulations in front of me, I do believe it goes through the full PDP, preliminary development plan and final development plan process.
Okay, is the applicant present this evening? If you could come forward, please, and state your name and address, and would you please spell your last name for the record?
Good evening, my name is Gregory Thurman, the applicant for Redwood, USA. My address is 20 Village Square, 45246, that's Cincinnati, Ohio.
And spell your last name, please.
Last name's Thurman, Thurman.
Would you like to make any additional comments, Mr. Thurman, or
Not
anything?
really, we're on the same page, we're in agreement fully, and we respect the process, and we've done a great job vetting the site with the wetlands and everything, and reducing our density accordingly, so to minimize those impacts. They're also costly, so there's a cost benefit to doing what we're doing as well. But other than that, I have no further comment that would add anything to the discussion.
Commissioners, any questions or comments for Mr. Thurman?
I have one, the water retention plan, just for curiosity, is that to use the existing water lake, or are you gonna bury some pipes?
No, we'll use the existing lake. We'll have a treatment system and probably a 4-bay pond of some sort during construction.
And will that lower the level of the lake
No.
as we see it now on a normal?
No, it'll be exactly where it is now. The weir is in place, and we plan on leaving the weir. We'll have an outfall structure that jives with that for overflow.
Just a word of compliment about adding the sidewalk on Pippin Road. I think that'll help address the concern that I had of students standing out there waiting for a bus. It'll give them some place to stand that's a demarcated place
I
on
agree with that.
Yeah.
This part of the road will be better served with a sidewalk on one side like that, at least one sidewalk.
Okay.
But totally agree with your comment there.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Thurman from the commissioners or Mr. Iona? Hearing none, could we have a motion to take action on case ZA 2020-07, whatever that motion might be? So moved to do what, Mr. Westfall? To change it, approve it, or?
So moved means I agree with it, let's vote on it.
Okay, all right.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on the part of the commissioners? Okay, Mr. Iona, if we could have a roll call, please.
Motion on the floor for to approve the final development plan to allow for the construction of the 130 multifamily dwelling units located on the site as proposed. The roll call is Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall,
Aye.
Commissioner Gehring,
Yes.
and Commissioner Grody.
Yes. So the motion has passed and been approved. And Mr. Thurman, we wish you well on your project. Okay, very good.
I do want to add that the next steps for that would be to go through the subdivision process, and that subdivision process where the roads and grading and installation happens for the benefit of you all as well as those folks at home that are watching. That is a process that's led by Hamilton County. We do have a part of that. We do play a role in that. But that is a process that is led by Hamilton County. That's the next steps in this process for any of those that are interested.
And will this go to the Board of Trustees at their next meeting?
This is a final action tonight. The next steps in the project are to go to Hamilton County to get
Okay,
their,
all right,
to get to the subdivision process and the development process.
okay.
That's been submitted too, so we're on the road.
Okay, have a nice holiday, sir. Moving on to item number 5, public hearings. We have case number ZA 2020-05, which was going to discuss massage, a text amendment for massage therapy versus massage parlor. And Mr. Iona, I think you're asking that this be tabled. Would you like to make some comments to that effect?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Staff is asking that we table this to allow for more time to ensure we have the appropriate text before we take it through the process.
Okay. So with that recommendation to table that, we do need a motion to do so. If we could have someone to make that motion.
I'll make a motion to table case number ZA 2020-05.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Westfall, were you second?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Iona, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall,
Aye.
Commissioner Gehring,
Yes.
Commissioner Grody.
Yes. So the motion to table has been approved, and I would assume, Mr. Iona, that this will be coming back at some future meeting.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Moving on to the second item under public hearings is case number ZA 2020-06. The applicant is HPA Development Group Incorporated. The location of this project is 3431 Springdale Road. And Mr. Iona, does staff have a presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, the application this evening is for a submitted request for a zone change on the site in question. And this is going from an R6, that's an urban residential zoning district, to a PDR, planned development residential district, with the corresponding preliminary development plan review. And the proposal is to allow for the construction of 66 attached townhomes on the site in question. I do want to point out that the ownership structure of the proposal is similar to, a private condominium style ownership, where individual owners own their own property with a HOA association governing specific community rules and regulations intended for the ongoing preservation of quality within the development. The action tonight by the board, is a recommendation, and that is a recommendation that goes to the Board of Trustees, who will take final action to approve or deny the zone change request, as well as the corresponding preliminary development plan. So there is a little history on this site. A long time ago, there were 2 single-family homes located on the site that were demolished somewhere around 1996. The property was then purchased by the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The area to the east of the site, Arborwood Development, which is a PD. It was a PD that was improved in 1970, and that development contains approximately 273 multifamily dwelling units and 115 detached single-family dwelling units. The area to the north of the site in question, the Taylor Point Nursing Home, was approved also as a planned development, a residential planned development in 2004, and it contains a 92-bed nursing home facility. And then earlier this year, in 2020, an application was made on the site in question for the construction of a 54-unit multifamily dwelling. The zoning commission provided a favorable recommendation of the application, which was denied by the Board of Trustees. And this was the LIHTC development, and there's a bunch more information in the staff packet about what a LIHTC development is, but for the sake of time, I'll continue to move on. So the site in question contains an area of approximately 8.6 acres, or 8.7 acres. Here you can see the site in question is located on the south side of Springdale Road. Grovewood Drive terminates into the site in question on the east side of the site. And then on the south side of the site, Mel Carl Road terminates into the site in question. The project site's in a pretty well built up part of the township. You can see some of the immediate areas surrounding the site in question are currently occupied by, moderate density detached single-family homes located in the Northbrook part of the township. And then somewhat close, but on the periphery of the site in question, you can see the multifamily residential dwellings that were part of that Arborwood development that were approved in 1970 that I discussed in the history section of the report. And then the peripheral area to the southwest, you can see one of the busiest intersections in the township at the intersection of Springdale and Colerain Avenue. You also see the Colerain Avenue corridor on the peripheral area to the west of the site, and that's on the left side of this slide. Here's a picture looking south towards the site in question. You can see that the site is currently occupied by vacant land. There is a significant amount of woods and grown-up brush that exists on the site. This is the approximate location of where the proposed access point to the development would be. Here's kind of a close-up from Springdale Road. You can see really the heart of the site is again occupied by more mature tree growth and brush. And here is a view of the south part of the site from Melcar Drive. looking to that south property line. And again, you can see here, there's throughout the site, there's a significant amount of tree growth and natural areas. So here's the zoning map. The areas to the east of the site, as well as the area to the portion of the area to the north of the site, is currently zoned at planned development residential. You can see that a portion of the area to the north, as well as the immediate areas to the south, the west, and peripheral area to the northwest of the site are currently zoned that R6 zone. That's an urban residential zone, which I discussed in the previous presentation, permits a variety of housing types, ranging from single-family up to 4-unit multifamily. And then the peripheral area to the southwest of the site in question, as you get closer to that intersection of Springdale and Colerain Avenue, is B2. And that's a very general business district which permits a variety of commercial retail service office uses. And then the site in question is currently that R6 zone. So it's the same zoning as the areas to the immediate west and south. And the proposed zoning is that PDR, which is the same as the existing areas to the immediate north as well as to the east. The intent of the PDR zone is to allow for residential development, and the intent of planned development districts overall is to allow for flexibility in the zoning requirements to get a higher quality development. It's to provide and locate recreation facilities, open space, or other common facilities while preserving existing landscape. The intent also is to encourage sound planning principles as it pertains to the site plan, preservation of open space, utilization of topography and other natural features on the site. It's to try to obtain creative and coordinated designs with the surrounding areas and allow for creative development that conforms to the goals and objectives set forth within the comprehensive plan. So again, the preliminary development process is a two-step process. And the first part is that preliminary development, the plan development process is a two-step process. And the first step is that preliminary development plan where a concept is really submitted with some of the ideas fleshed out. And that is an application that's submitted to staff. We do a review. We present it to the Zoning Commission at a public hearing, and the Zoning Commission takes action to make a recommendation of favorable or unfavorable to the Board of Trustees, who take ultimate action or the final action to approve that preliminary development plan. And then the second step is the final development plan process, where the Zoning Commission has the final action, and that's similar to what we just did with the last application this evening. The submitted development plan by the applicant indicates the following information. It shows the construction of 66 townhomes on the site. Development occurs in buildings that contain 3 townhome units per building, or 3 units in each, in each building complex. And they're all detached. They're, again, townhomes. However, due to the structure that the developer, their protocol for dispensing and selling the lots, they want to have each of the lots separated. So that's why you see all of the lots separated in that, more traditional kind of like townhome fashion. Development on the site is really contained within 2 areas. This is actually facing north, so north goes this way. And you see that you have a large component of the development located here in the north portion of the site, and then you have a smaller portion of development located here in the south of the site. There's a significant topography and some type of there's a stream that runs through the site here. And again, the north and the south part of the development are really separated by that stream and that topography. There's two flag lot style areas of the development that each contain 3 units. And you can see that here with lots and units 55 through 57, and then over here with units 16 through 18. There are 2 open space lots on the site in question, which account for approximately 25% of the development area. And you can see open space A here, which provides that open space buffer to the areas to the east. And then there's open space area B, which also contains 2 detention areas which are proposed for the site. Vehicular access to the development is provided from Springdale Road, as well as Grovewood Drive. And then on the south portion of the development, it's provided from Melcarl Drive. There is on-street parking that will be provided throughout the site, as these will not be private streets. These will be public streets that will be, dedicated rights-of-way. They will have sidewalk, and there will be on-street parking. On-site parking is provided for each unit through the use of a garage, as well as a driveway. It's a 1-car garage on each unit, and then there's also a driveway. So that meets the minimum of 2 spaces required within the zoning resolution. There's also 12 off-street parking spaces provided in pods throughout the development. You can see one space is provided here. There's another pod here on Street A. There's an additional pod here located at the cul-de-sac of Street A. And then there's 2 spaces provided here between units 48 and 49. I do want to note that the 3, or I think it's 4 spaces located adjacent to Lot 15 are located approximately 8 to 9 feet from the east property line here, and the zoning resolution requires 50 feet. So there's an inherent variance request within the submitted development plan of about 49 feet for that, for those parking spaces. So that does it for parking. I want to point out that there's a pathway that connects the north and south portion of the development so that they are connected. And then there is a dog play area located along that pathway in kind of a green recreational space that's identified on the development plan. Here you can see the unit mix as well as the interior layout of all of the units. The unit mix will be all 3 bedroom units, and they're going to be townhomes. Each unit will feature the following amenities. It will have, again, the 3 bedrooms. It will have 2 baths or a 2-bath with a half bathroom option. There's going to be a 1-car attached garage. Each unit will have a kitchen, a dining room, a great room, a basement, and a storage room. There will be 3 stories. And then the exterior materials of each unit are composed of a portion of brick masonry, as well as vinyl shake, and then board and batten. The applicant has submitted a landscape plan that indicates the following information. You can see a significant landscape buffer has been provided along Springdale Road, and it consists of trees and shrubs provided in an effect that provides almost a landscaped corridor along Springdale Road. The applicant has also indicated additional detail provided at the entrance on Springdale Road to provide a gateway into the site. They've indicated that there will also be a stone masonry sign located at Springdale Road at that curb cut, and you can see that. Here's the location of those proposed signs. So when you evaluate the proposal in comparison to the underlying zoning, the current R6 standard as shown on the plan, the minimum lot size is very similar. The minimum lot width, and when you talk about that, I want to kind of bring something up here, and that's the way that the form and function of the development as it's proposed. As I mentioned earlier, the applicant, in order to meet the protocol that they have for sale of units, they have these, each of the buildings contain 3 units, and they've been broken up into 3 lots. Whereas in all actuality, it really operates as, one building on, what would be a larger unit. But again, for the sake of sale, it's been broken up. So when you evaluate, when staff did their evaluation, they didn't look at the units as an individual, but the sum of their parts. So again, if you were to look at the individual frontage here, obviously that would be deficient. However, that's not the form and function of what we have here. Unit 19 in this example doesn't stand alone. Unit 21 doesn't stand alone, neither does Unit 2020. They function as one connected building, an attached building. And for that reason, we've done our comparison, as to the actual form and function of what's going to be built on the site. And again, the reason we did that is because, these individual lots have been created in order to adhere to the requirements of the developer for sale. And, our ordinance doesn't really account for that. Our ordinance is really written more for multifamily development, which is located on one lot. Because this is going to be for sale to individual owners, they need to have something to sell. And that's why these lots have been created. So again, the evaluation has been done when you look at the building as a whole, and each of these groups as a whole. And when you do that, you find that, to be honest, with the exception of the density, a lot of the development is very similar to what the current R6 standard requires. The minimum lot width, when you look at those as a group, all of the lots meet that with the exception of one set of lots. And if you look at the 16 through 18, their frontage is the only ones that is deficient of that minimum lot width. But with regard to the minimum front yard setback, minimum side yard, and then the minimum rear yard, all of these groups or buildings and their corresponding lots do meet those area and height requirements. The submitted development plan also meets the maximum building height of 3 floors. And the one thing that has increased here is the development density. The current R6 standards allow 5.8 dwelling units per acre, and the proposed standard is approximately 7.67 dwelling units per acre. So there are 4 requests within the submitted application. The first is a zone change and preliminary development plan requests to allow for the construction of the project as proposed. The second is a variance from the minimum lot width, as well as variances from the side yard setbacks of the interior lots to allow for the proposed development to occur within individual lots within one building. And that's what I had previously discussed with those groups of lots, where you have a building that has 3 lots, but it functions as one building with regard to the zoning standards for area and height. And then the third request is a variance from the minimum width of a dwelling unit to allow for the construction of 20 feet wide units, where 22 feet is the minimum requirement. So these townhomes are being proposed to be 20 feet wide to meet the floor plan that the developer has, and the minimum required width is 22 feet. And then the fourth request is a variance from the setback requirements for the off-street parking area adjacent to Unit 15, and again, the requirement is a 50-foot setback from the adjacent single-family lot line for the, next to the Grovewood Drive, and the proposal shows approximately 8 to 9 feet. And so section 4.5 states that the following criteria shall serve as conditions that should be satisfied before the approval of the preliminary development plan. And there's 7 items. The first is that the preliminary development district be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Number 2, that the proposed uses will have a beneficial effect on the community. Number 3, that the internal streets and primary and secondary roads interconnect with the surrounding road network. Number 4, that the site will be accessible from public roads, and that those roads can carry that traffic for the proposed development. Number 5, that the minimum common open space areas have been designated and will be duly transferred to a homeowners association. And number 6, the preliminary development plan is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning resolution. And then number 7, that the preliminary development plan has been transmitted to all other agencies and departments charged with responsibility of review. Based on this, staff is recommending the following. As it pertains to request number 1, staff is recommending approval of the zone change and preliminary development plan to allow for the construction of the project as proposed, subject to the following conditions. And that's condition A, that additional landscape be provided along the perimeter of the development to ensure proper screening from adjacent single-family residential dwellings. That the final building elevation shall be in keeping with the design and materials contained and submitted within this preliminary development plan application. That a homeowners association be established and maintained in a perpetuity to ensure proper maintenance of the site as well as the open space. That the applicant, to the greatest extent possible, relocate the off-street parking located adjacent to Lot 15 into another part of the development. That all fire hydrants be installed per Cincinnati Waterworks and Hamilton County requirements. That the proposal meets all requirements of the Hamilton County engineer prior to the approval of the final plat. And then finally, that the proposal meets all the requirements of the Hamilton County Department of Soil and Water prior to the approval of the final plat. Staff is recommending approval of the variances from the minimum lot width, as well as the variances from the side yard setbacks of the interior lots for the proposed development to occur as proposed. Number 3, staff is recommending approval of the variance from the minimum width of a dwelling unit to allow for the construction of 20 feet wide units where 22 feet is the minimum requirement. And as it pertains to request 4, staff is recommending denial of the variance from the setback requirements for the off-street parking area that is located adjacent to Unit 15. And that's the requirement of a 50-foot setback when that off-street parking area is located adjacent to a single-family residential lot. And staff is providing this based on the following. Number 1, staff finds the plan to be consistent with the comprehensive plan that states that townhome development is appropriate for the site. The proposed density, character, and form of the development as conditioned is also generally consistent with land uses located within the immediate and peripheral areas, which consist of single-family residential dwellings, multifamily residential dwellings, as well as a nursing care facility. The proposed townhomes will also provide a housing option that's really not readily available in Colerain Township and fills a gap in the housing market. Number 3, the proposed street extensions do connect to the existing street network in a manner that is consistent with the required findings of the zoning resolution. Number 4, the proposed development does have direct access to Springdale Road, which is a county thoroughfare of sufficient capacity to serve the development. The proposal was forwarded to the Hamilton County engineer for comment, and their response is attached. They are looking to have a traffic impact study done on the site. At that point, any improvements that need to be made to the site plan or to the roadway, can be vetted prior to the final development plan. And then number 5, all open space per the conditions of approval, will be preserved and maintained by that homeowners association. And number 6, the proposal is consistent with the intent and purpose of the zoning resolution for planned developments. Number 7, this plan has been distributed to other applicable agencies, and there have been no responses sent that directly recommend denial of the proposal. Number 8, with regard to the variance for the internal unit lot setbacks and minimum lot widths, staff does find that to be that approval to be appropriate, as it would create a hardship on the applicant for the sale of these townhomes. The character, form, and function of the lots and buildings, does not create a circumvention of the intent of the current zoning regulations, which are really, when you look at them as a whole, they're skewed more towards regulating multifamily than the type of development that's being proposed. And then, number 9, the proposed variance for the reduction in unit width is appropriate, as it allows the developer to construct a product that is consistent with their current architectural plan set without allowing too great of a circumvention of the zoning resolution. And then 10, the disapproval of the off-street parking is warranted, as the request would allow too great of a circumvention of the current zoning regulations and could have a significant impact on the surrounding residential properties. Before I wrap up, I do want to again note that approval of this preliminary development plan, if it does get approved by the Board of Trustees, once approved, it does lock in this site plan, of course, subject to minor modifications allowable in section 4.5 of the zoning resolution. But, the site plan, the street layout, and the general density of the site is locked in if this development plan is approved. And any deviation or change would have to come back through the whole preliminary development public hearing process. And that's all for my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions before we.
Thank you, Mr. Iona. Commissioners, before we hear from the applicant, thank you, Mr. Urbanzik. Any questions or comments for Mr. Iona?
I would like to confirm the roadways you mentioned are public.
Yes.
So, that is requiring our maintenance department to provide any future maintenance, snow removal, and so forth.
Correct. As proposed, they will interconnect to the street system, and they will be dedicated as township streets. And they will provide the full slate, whereas Lake Gloria was a private drive. It will be subject to all the standards and regulations set forth by the county engineer for, width, depth, type of construction, and then curb, gutter, and sidewalk will also be required.
Okay, and then with that in mind, the Northbrook neighborhood has they're fairly challenged with parking, and I know the intent is to have some parking pads throughout. But will this, being a public roadway, allow for on-street parking as well, causing some of the same issues that we know are in that neighborhood now with two cars trying to pass each other in a fairly small roadway? So I'm assuming those same types of challenges will exist in this development as well.
There will be on-street parking provided, as it is a public, a dedicated public right-of-way, yes.
But the roadways are no wider than what's there. I know the entrance to Laura Linda is a wider entrance.
Yes.
There's the left turn lane.
Yes.
But in this development, it would be just a standard two directions with some on-street parking as well.
So it will be a 50 feet right-of-way with a 28 feet width travel for 2 lanes. And that looks like it matches up. If you look up here, it looks like it matches up with what is adjacent to it on Grovewood Drive.
And there is a driveway plus the garage. So
Yes.
in theory, they should be able to park in driveways. Guests can park on the parking pads,
Correct.
and we're hopeful that there's not a traffic challenge, because that is going to become a cut-through street. We all know that'll be a cut-through to try to avoid that traffic light. I think it'll be rather challenging. As we know, Mr. Westfall as well, we are Northbrook residents, so we tend to hold this neighborhood a little more tightly to our hearts,
Right.
if you will.
Correct.
So yes, that is a challenge.
Right. And I think maybe the applicant might be able to speak a little bit more to that with regard to how they plan to potentially control traffic or, the potential for cut-throughs.
That's it for me.
Mr. Iona, I had just one item. Can you define the two words flag lots? I saw that in your presentation and in the reading. What does that represent mean?
So that's a lot so if you look here, actually, this has been a beneficial slide. So if you look at this lot here, they're a little bit further off of the road, and they're typically accessed off of one driveway that, reaches back beyond, that typical street facade or street signature. So if you look here, you have your built-up kind of street signature, and then you have a development that kind of sits in the back. And these aren't true flag lots, but that's kind of that flag lot style of development is what I would kind of.
Could you give me a definition of flag lots? What's that really mean?
It depends on who you ask. They could be a panel, it's
Out the
typically.
Websters.
A true flag lot is where you have a lot that sits back off of the road and it's accessed through a stem or a drive access, which is sometimes called a flag pole or a handle, a
Okay.
panhandle.
Panhandle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of that. And it's a lot that sits back typically off the road. And it's accessed from a longer driveway. And those, you can have flag lots that are, that have stems or flag poles that, vary significantly in length, so.
Okay, that helps.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Iona before we ask the applicant to come forward? So I take it, gentlemen, you are the applicant? Okay, whoever wishes to come forward, if you would please give us your name, your address, and then for the record, if you'd spell your last name, please.
I'm Graham Carlin. I'm with HPA Development Group, 9091 Montgomery Road, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45243. My last name's spelled P as in Paul, A-R-L-I-N.
Thank you. So if you'd like to make your presentation, sir?
Great. Well, thank you for having us this evening, especially in the crazy world we're all living in. I'm here tonight with Craig Grassi, representing Ryan Homes. I'm with HPA Development Group. We are a residential land development company, so my organization does not build homes. We strictly do site development. Ryan Homes is one of our larger customers that buys lots from us, so we do the site development, sell lots to them. So most of your development questions this evening can be directed towards me, and I brought Craig here with me as well to answer any specific questions you have regarding the product that they plan on building. I don't want to reiterate Mr. Iona's presentation because it was extremely thorough and comprehensive of what we want to do on this site. I would like to mention that over the past several years, we've seen an increase in demand for sale product on smaller lots, catering to first-time home buyers, in particular divorcees, people who want less maintenance at their homes. I grew up in this industry thinking bigger is better and bigger lots, and people want more distance between them. And what I'm starting to find out, and what we're seeing in a lot of our different neighborhoods, is there's a real trend for people to want still a nice home with multiple bedrooms and good quality, high-quality living space, but not big yards to maintain. So as we looked for different sites to bring in maintenance-free product, this site was listed and came to mind as an exceptional location to do what we call a townhome or landominium style product to cater to those buyers. It's obviously a tremendous location that's close to a ton of retail and restaurants and all the things that people want out of a lifestyle, being close to all the amenities and on 27, and obviously close to the highway system and without being too far out into the burbs. And so we think it's a great site, and the site, other products or the developments that we've done with Ryan, catering to the kind of that first-time home buyer, that $200,000 plus or minus price range, has gone extremely well. With the pandemic, it's even gone better. I know a lot of businesses are suffering right now. People are buying houses, and with the lower interest rates, and I think a lot of first-time buyers coming out of their luxury apartments in the urban core are looking for more space. A lot of people are working from home. We think that this worked before the pandemic. It really works even better now. Our plan itself boasts over 25% open space. When we looked at planning the site, we put a lot of consideration in connecting Mel Carl Drive all the way out to Springdale Road, which would have created another cut through. But in this day and age, we really try to avoid any stream corridors for a number of reasons, both the environmental impacts, and there's a lot of pressure put on developers to avoid these areas, so we don't have to permit them through the core or the Ohio EPA. And where there's creeks, we generally try to stay away. So that's why we propose kind of doing this in two phases, coming off of separate areas. It also will provide a nice wooded area, provide for a nice area for detention between the units. As Mr. Iona said, our main entry will be on Springdale Road. We'll have stone entry monuments on both sides, landscaping and fencing all along the frontage with irrigation. Typically, we use low voltage landscape lighting on some of the trees and monumentation. And I guess all in all, we think that this is a location and a development plan that would be an asset for us as well as the township long term. And we are very excited about it. I've personally never done business in the township. Your staff has been wonderful to date to work with and communicate. I really appreciate that. I would like to mention there were several conditions in the report that I just proactively address. The parking adjacent to lot 15, where we're proposing 4 parking spots. Obviously, the more off-street parking, the better. Hard to quantify exactly how much we would need, but we know that the more we can bring it off the street, the better, and that's why we propose those 4 spots there. I wasn't aware that it was such a variance from your code when I encouraged the engineer to draw that. So we can certainly relocate them elsewhere. Right, they're in open space, but as you can see with some of the other locations, they're on people's lots. We can address that through parking easements or whatnot. I could see us doing more on lot 10 and more on the corner with lot 24, potentially a couple up behind the entry monuments near lot 51. So I think there are some opportunities to add a few in other locations. We're certainly open to that. It's not a big deal for us. We do think having them is important, and if it's obviously a significant variance, then we'd like the opportunity before we go, it's assuming approval, but when we go in front of the trustees to modify that plan to address that comment. There was also another comment regarding buffer plantings around the perimeter. the site's almost entirely wooded. It makes absolutely zero sense to plant buffer plantings unless we're gonna clear cut entirely to the adjacent property line. So in lieu of adding plantings, I'd prefer to address that differently with either some form of a 10 or 15-foot conservation easement. Really, it costs us money to take down trees, and we can't sell the lots for as much if we take away the trees as well, because people like that privacy in the rear yards. There's really a handful of locations where adjacent to lot 16, 57, 52, and 66. So there's 4 spots where we're about 20 feet from the adjacent property. I guess I would propose that to the extent we can maintain the existing vegetation, we do, and if we have to clear up to the property line to accomplish grading, this is a preliminary plan, I don't know what the final grading plan is gonna look like until it's fully engineered, but then we come back with some adequate buffer solution.
Yeah, and if you're trying to kind of iterate on that as just as something that you propose to the board, that the intent of that condition was to just ensure that there is screening and without showing preservation here, just to make sure that there is screening and buffering, and wherever you tear out trees to grade and do whatever, you replace them back with landscaped areas and, you know, so maybe the path forward would be some type of conservation easement and then maybe a tree survey to make sure that whatever you're putting there is going to be something that's there long-term along the boundaries or something like that. And then that would,
We're open to that.
yeah, and then somewhere where you could come back in the final development plan and just show that sufficient buffering would maybe be an alternative condition.
Okay. So that's really all I have. I'm certainly available for any questions,
Okay.
as well as Mr. Rassi.
Mr. Rassi, did you want to make a presentation?
Yeah, I'll introduce myself.
Okay.
My name's Craig Rassi, last name's Craig Rassi, last name is spelled R-A-S-S-I. Address is 8622 Jackman Drive in Westchester, Ohio, 45069. I am with Ryan Homes. As Mr. Parlor let you know, we are the home builder, and we are the ones that would be selling the homes, the townhomes in this community. We are very excited to get back in Colerain Township. We have done work in the township previously with you. We also, to Graham, Mr. Parlin's point is the first-time buyer. We feel that is a need for that in the market here, and for this area to be able to serve that need for you as the township. Per what Mike has been able to show you, we are going to be building a 3-bedroom plan. It is going to be a 1,576 square foot townhome that would be able to be a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, possibly 2.5-bath home with masonry components on the outside, with upgraded vinyl on the outside, and really giving a quality home to the home buyer with low maintenance, which is what we're trying to achieve with the community, with the HOA and having the low maintenance lifestyle. So I will also be open for any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, the floor is open for our applicants. Any questions or comments?
So for a 1,500 square foot townhome, what is the approximate going sale price for those units?
Yeah, so the average price right now, what we are projecting would be in the low 200s for these units.
Do you have any idea of what the HOA costs would be per month?
We haven't put together, Nate, the plan yet for what those costs would be. But it would be snow removal on the driveways and lawn maintenance for that.
Snow removal on the private property part? Okay.
A follow-up question I have to the point about the trees and the buffering. In the previous application, there was mention from several of the neighbors that bordered these properties that there were a lot of trees that were fallen, dead, some of them landing on their private fencing and and so forth. Could we ensure that the mention of the conservation and the preservation of these bufferings also include the removal of those dead fallen trees, the invasive plants like the honeysuckles and so forth, not just preserving what's there, but improving it as well? I don't mean going in and replanting those areas, but making it better.
Let me address the kind of the dead ash trees, because we have experienced a lot of that in the past decade or so with fallen trees, and that's not unique to this site. Our clearing companies do a pretty good job about, the short answer to your question is yes, we can remove any fallen trees. We will have huge tree removing equipment in there. It's very easy and economical at that point to remove anything else, even if it's in that buffer zone area. That's not a problem at all. As it relates to honeysuckle, it's a double-edged sword. Honeysuckle is invasive. We don't want it. I've gotten rid of most of it at my house. But when you do get rid of it, it creates a wonderful buffer for not seeing your neighbors. So without truly seeing how much of it's there and how much of that is the buffer, I certainly, I'd like to kind of keep our options open on that front just to see how much of it's there. If it's really creating privacy for what will be our new homeowners as well as the existing homeowners behind us, then it may make some sense to leave some of it to just for screening purposes.
Thank you.
Has HPA done any kind of a research background on how well this will be accepted and how fast it will sell out?
We defer most of our market research to Ryan Homes because they're going to be the ones selling the houses, so I'll let Craig weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, from our research, we've seen, I mean, there is a lot of people renting houses because the houses possibly in here for this price point, there isn't many of them around to be able to purchase. So between rental of what people are trying to find in this area, plus the resale low houses on market, we do feel that there is a high demand for this product. For 66 units, I mean, it is probably looking at a 2-year time frame for this type of product to be sold, and then further time to have those built out.
Do you intend to build it all out at one shot, or are you going to build sections and sell them as they go and then continue on with the building?
We probably do multiple phases, but I think there's a lot of efficiency in building all of Street A and Redwood in one phase and then doing the Bill Carl separately. But,
Okay.
I'm not sure we put a lot of thought into it. It's a fairly small development. I think we lose any economies of scale by trying to break it up too much.
Okay. And these are individually owned townhomes?
Correct.
Okay, but somewhere in all the paperwork we have, I saw that there would be rental limitations. Can you address that?
So after talking to township staff, we
Come to the microphone, sir.
After talking to township staff, we discussed the merits of putting a limitation on any rentals in the homeowners association documents, which we're open to doing. Obviously, Ryan Homes is going to sell these to individual buyers. After that point, so it's not going to be an apartment community where you've got one singular owner, but there may be property owners that want to rent out their townhome units in the future. So our thought is just to put limitations so it doesn't become a universal rental community.
So you're talking about subletting as opposed to Ryan Homes renting them out initially?
Correct. Subletting, they're not going to build a rental community. This is not what they do.
Yeah, so if I bought a unit, I would be forbidden from subletting it to you.
You would if it were above a threshold that's dictated within the homeowners association documents, yes.
Okay,
So I think the theory when we had talked about it was if somebody goes to the Florida for 5-6 months a year. They would be able to potentially sublet it, or a portion of the community within a threshold could do that, considering, the demographics in Colerain Township and things like that. You would have that ability, but only a percentage,
Correct.
a very small percentage, would be allowed to do that within that. And that they would have an HOA to govern all that, and, they could establish that through this process.
Okay. I was interested in what Ms. McMullen brought up before about the parking and it becoming a cut-through street. Have you given any consideration in working in conjunction with the township of using various speed control devices so it slows people down and so forth?
We're open to any sort of speed control device that could be created. Obviously, we're not talking about a lot of street, and in most sites that we look develop that have existing stubs, from a planning standpoint, it translates into, let's start connecting those existing stubs, because they were designed at some point to continue on. Otherwise, Grovewood Drive would have ended in a cul-de-sac there, or that stub wouldn't have existed at all. So, obviously, my preference would be not to connect to Grovewood at all. But since that existing stub is there, we made an assumption that the township would want to see that connectivity. So the number one way we could eliminate any cut-through is not connecting at all, which, if you guys are open to that, we would be thrilled by that decision. If connecting is what we should be doing, because there's an existing stub there, the best traffic control we have is the stop sign at the intersection. I don't know what that exact distance is, but you're probably only going less than a football field's length between the intersection of Street A and Grovewood to the Grovewood stop. So you don't have a long, really long straightaway where you see a ton of people speeding. Will people cut through there? I'm sure they will. I don't know how you stop them from doing that. I'm open to ideas, but I think that if that's the quickest way to get somewhere, that's the way they're gonna go.
Well, I also worry about, there's only two ways to get out of there. And one of them goes on to Springdale Road, which just a little farther up goes with Colerain. And Lori and I both see traffic backed up at least that far. Go out there on December 23rd at 6 o'clock at night and see what you see. So if these guys, those people need more than one way to get in and out of there, that just makes sense.
Right, on December 23rd, they would choose to go Grovewood and hit the
Yes.
traffic light at Laura
Right.
Linda.
Gotcha.
I would.
There will be a lot of it there at that time, but I just can't see one way coming out of there for all those people. I mean, that's a lot of homes.
It'd be 51 units, and obviously, we would defer to the traffic impact study to drive, what would be needed to do that. But if you guys live there, I'm gonna take your word for it. If on December 23rd, it's backed up that far, you're gonna know better than I
Or
do.
really, any Friday night, yeah.
Try to get onto Colerain Avenue.
So Mr. Iona, he mentioned that they were wanting to connect this because of Grovewood, and that they have the willingness to make it a cul-de-sac. What is the township's opinion of that?
We typically advocate for connectivity. It's one of the 5 bases for approval of this type of development plan. Now, you all are certainly welcome to amend, change, or make a condition that maybe they evaluate the use of, cul-de-sac versus connection. I do want to point out, as the applicant had stated, you have a curb as your egress, and you come around the curb on what's currently called Street A, and you do hit a stop sign. Whereas if you're on Laura Linda, it moves pretty quick. It's very conducive. It's a wider street, and that really is conducive to more speed. The design of that, looking at this, I think that the way that the built environment looks to me, that if you're cutting through there, one, you don't really have the chance to hit that 45 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour before you get to the stop sign. And then as you take a left, just the form and function, and that's a big thing in planning is the form of the surrounding areas really dictates how fast people go. And when you look at Laura Linda, all the houses are really far away from the road's a lot wider. It makes you start to think that it's, you're expected to go faster. It's the whole road versus a street. And this functions more as a street where you have these denser buildings and denser units that are located closer to the street. And to me, I could go either way, but the resolution does state that we advocate for connectivity. And then I would also just add that, given that built environment and then the length of the streets, that, it doesn't seem like you're going to have that whole aspect of Laura Linda, where if you've ever driven Laura Linda, people hit pretty high speeds on that street. So, while there may be cut-throughs.
That at 55 to, I think it hit 70 during the traffic study.
I've seen people do it. Yeah, I was actually out there this week taking photos, and I saw people do it. Whereas with this, again, it's a very limited, ability to hit those speeds. And again, that character and form, there's a ton of research on that. But again, that is the purview of the zoning commission. And cut-throughs those are things that are going to happen. That's part of, living in a more dense, well-connected area. With that, I would leave it up to the board to make the decision, or maybe consider the evaluation of cul-de-sac versus connection.
Right, because the stop sign itself will only become effective if you're going from Grovewood to Street A to Springdale, so kind of backing your way out of the neighborhood.
Could it be
to avoid the traffic light.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be effective for those that enter from Springdale and then move into.
Could it be a three-way stop, that you would just put up a stop sign at the entire intersection and all traffic stops at that?
Yeah.
I think that's true too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Iona, would the traffic study possibly result in the installation of a traffic signal at the end of Street A and Springdale?
It could warrant that. So as stated in the Hamilton County Engineer's comments, a traffic study will be required for this development. And that, that traffic study will dictate any needed improvements on site or on the access road, which is Springdale.
Now, deferring to the case earlier this year, I believe the traffic study came back and said not enough traffic for there, but that was without Grovewood connecting.
Correct.
Going back to my question that I addressed to these gentlemen regarding the research background, with this possibility of these 66 units going in, how will that impact one way or the other what we just took action on 4 or 5 months ago, that 55 plus development right across the street from Red Lobster?
So that's a great question. So the area in question here, and I'll point that out for the folks at home, is the development plan that was for the senior development, that flats. It was the senior flats development that was located on the site of the former, I think it was the former Mexican restaurant that was located there on the south side of Springdale. So that was, that project did not get funded. So it did not get awarded the funding through the LIHTC process. And currently there is no action being taken to pursue that development by the applicant.
But that went all the way through final development plan, didn't it?
It did not go through final development plan. It went through the preliminary development. It was approved. That is, they needed to get the zoning correct because they needed that zone change in order to get the plan approved. And then that was one of the criteria for the LIHTC application. After going through all of that, that site was not awarded the credits needed to get the project off the ground.
Okay. What is the life expectancy then of that preliminary development plan?
It is 1 year.
1 year,
Yes.
okay.
And that would be that, again, that's always, as I've stated a couple times tonight, that is that exact development plan.
Okay.
So no deviation from that. Any deviation from that would come back before the board.
Okay. Commissioners, any other comments, questions of these gentlemen or Mr. Iona?
Could you jump back to the one picture you were just showing? Next one back. That means the next one.
Now that's Melcarl Drive.
Man,
There is a tree line that becomes landlocked, it appears, from that drawing. And I just want to know, is that the one with a little orange outline showing the properties?
Oh, yes. Okay, yep,
Yeah. See behind where it says single-family residential?
right here.
Right to the right, down south, right in there. Are those backyards of people's property? We're not landlocking a block of land, are we, in there?
This is the backyard. Yeah, those are all that's a cul-de-sac, and those lots all go out in your typical kind of cul-de-sac spread down there to the lot lines.
Isn't that approximately where that little creek comes through, maybe?
Yeah, the little creek kind of comes through. You can kind of see it right here in the dark areas on the aerial. It's always a good indication of a creek, but it kind of meanders a little bit through here.
Okay. All right, any other questions of these two gentlemen or Mr. Iona? Any other comments before we move to public hearing? Okay, not hearing any, then we need a motion. Thank you, gentlemen. Don't go away, you may be needed yet. Okay. We need a motion to open public hearing. If I could have that motion, please.
I'll make that motion.
I heard several voices. Who?
I'll second it.
So Bruce, you moved? Oh, Lori, okay.
I did.
And could we have a roll call, please?
Motion to open the public hearing. Commissioner Faring?
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall? Commissioner Gehring?
Yes.
Commissioner Grody?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Before inviting our first speaker in, we have several. Just a word, we thank those who are here this evening to address the commission for your time to attend the meeting and your willingness to express yourself regarding the matter at hand. We do value your input and will give it serious consideration as we decide upon what is the best course of action for this matter at hand and Colerain Township. Each speaker, when asked to come to the podium, needs to state his or her name, their address, spell their last name, and will be sworn in.
Yes, they will be sworn in, correct.
When speaking, please speak directly into the microphone and share your comments in a brief and concise manner. Please refrain from repeating yourself. If you are the second, third, fourth, or subsequent speaker, please do not repeat what has already been said. The commission and the staff are here to listen to your input and may not necessarily respond to your comments. However, they do reserve the right to ask questions of each speaker. Thank you for your understanding. So, if we could have our first speaker, Mr. Urbanzik. Okay. And if you could lower your mask and give us your name, your address, and if you would spell your last name for the record, please.
Well, my name is on the sheet and my address. State's Attorney General's office says I don't have to give it in a public forum because of privacy. And I've had some issues when I spoke the last time. So it's on the form. So you have my name and you have my address.
Is that acceptable, Mr. Iona?
That's acceptable.
Okay.
We'll put it on record, and if, yeah, that's fine, we can put it in the record.
So it is there because I've had some folks who contacted me after the last time.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have two names here that I
I'm the
think
second.
are both female.
I'm the second.
You're the second. Okay, I
Yes.
just wanted to clarify
No
which one.
problem.
Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. Secondly, there were a lot of things we could not hear, specifically when you were speaking. So I apologize if I ask another question that's already been asked, okay? And when you all were referring to the map and the different questions that you had, there was no camera on the map. So once again, if I ask a question that's already been answered, we couldn't see it.
We understand.
Okay, so we didn't, first, Mr. Iona, why did we not get on our letter that Ryan Holmes was the builder? Our letter simply said HPA development.
That's the applicant, so we send a letter out with the information that's on the application.
Okay, because I would have had different questions for Ryan than I have. He mentioned he can't answer them, which is a deterrent for a preliminary hearing. Mr. HPA, Mr. Harlan, in your website, it says that you've worked with prominent development groups and different communities, but it doesn't list which one. I'd like to know at least a couple for reference, because when I looked on the website and then did some searching, there were a lot of negative comments about the work that you've done. And I also know that that could be sour grapes or some sort, or sour milk. But if we had a list of which developments you have worked with and possibly can have a site inspection, that would help me to see the work that you've done. So that would be very helpful if you shared not just your superlatives, but the actual work that you have accomplished.
Sure, we have no problems sharing work.
Before the next hearing.
What's that?
Before the next
Excuse
hearing.
me just a moment. For the sake of those in the audience out in television land, could you lower your mask and speak up so we can still maintain the distance, though?
I think,
My organization is more than happy to share with you a list of different communities around greater Cincinnati, as well as specific neighborhoods that we have developed. We do have a company profile sheet that I'm happy to share with the township that outlines different projects that we've done.
Great, because my research only allowed me to find Gray Cliff and then 2 developments recently where there were a lot of negative comments about the lack of your HOA and following through. It said that the green space you promised is just gravel and path. So I'm not going to take something that I read. I'd like to drive through the communities.
Mr. Chairman, I think in order to move efficiently and effectively.
I will be efficient.
Oh, no, I'm not speaking for you. I'm just saying, we have somebody speaking from the audience, and we're going to switch back and forth at the dais. We're in the middle of a pandemic. I think it would be best to proceed with having all the questions answered, ask it at once.
Okay.
And then have a seat, and then allow the applicant to answer those questions. And then if we want to go back and do a rebuttal, again, this is a public hearing. We're not trying to silence anybody, but in order to move efficiently and then make sure everybody at home can hear what everybody's saying, because there's not a microphone throughout this whole room, I think that would be a appropriate way to proceed if everybody else agrees.
Yeah, I only have a few questions.
Okay, yeah,
at this
great,
point.
of course, yeah,
Um,
certainly.
When you all were discussing the cut-through, our specific Northbrook area, we could not hear out there, and I guess I could watch it when I got home, but then I couldn't ask a question. The Melcrow Drive, is that going to be a cut-through, or what is going to be a cut-through? That's probably a better question. What is going to be a cut-through? Thirdly, you mentioned the trees, and you, when Ms. McMullen brought that up, you said that you would take care of the trees that are fallen. You did not say that you would clear the trees that are dead or the shrubs that are dead. You simply said fallen. So I would like to know what you plan to do about the trees that are dead, because the previous ownership never cleared the tree, never did anything. And one of my last things is, if Ryan Holmes is going to be building the houses, who will set the HOA limits? Will you, and I heard you all mention this, but I didn't hear a clear answer. I was a realtor, and when you do build a development, you can put into the HOA how many investors, how long a house cannot be sold to an investor. When will we get clarification on that? Because that is one of the problems that we do have, is a lot of homes in Northbrook and throughout Colerain Township are now HUD housing. So it's not enough for me anyway to hear that you plan to do it. I like a definitive answer as to if you're going to put limitations and limit investors, and that's for Ryan Homes. I would assume that whoever is doing that, is it Ryan Homes that's doing that? The developer, your HOA will be doing that?
I think, like, again, let's just go, I have the
Okay.
questions, I'm recording them for you, and I remember you from last time, so I'm glad you showed up again.
Okay, Mr.
And,
Ryan, I heard you.
Okay, and I'll record your questions for you.
Okay. So basically, those were my only four questions. One was about the cut-through. The other one was about the cleanup of the area and the investors, the HOA, and the other one was about being able to see the current work that you all have done. I know Ryan's Homes. I don't know HBA. And that's it.
I also have a tree question about what was cleared and cut.
Yeah, nothing's been cleared.
Okay.
Ma'am, if you
Thank you.
would like to have a seat over in one of those vacant chairs, and either Mr. Parlin or Mr. Rossi, would you like to come forward and answer the questions? Mr. Ione, you want to treat them one at a time?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and go with number one. I think that talking about access through the development, and there was a question about Mel Carl and whether that would continue through the site.
No, the proposed site plan has Mel Carl terminating in a cul-de-sac. And the cut-through that we discussed that you couldn't hear outside was where Grovewood Drive connects to our proposed street A.
Okay,
Okay. And then there was also a question about the cleared trees versus dead trees. From my understanding, from previous applications, you live very close, and there's issues with trees that are falling over
Not just on mine, but the entire.
and throughout the site. And then there's also, yeah, so there's that, and then there's the scrub brush throughout there that just kind of has accumulated and, just without maintenance over years. A lot of these natural areas have started to look, I think, pretty yucky, and with the dead trees, there's also the issues with potential adverse impacts from a tree falling over and hitting somebody or something. So do you want to kind of talk about your commitment
My
to?
intent, and to clarify, was that our organization, when we clear the site for development, will remove all dead trees and all fallen trees.
Okay.
okay. Question 3?
And then number 3 was the Ryan Homes. So what kind of HOA limits would you be willing to set for the rentals, like potential rentals and investors?
I probably want to confer to legal counsel to figure out what Ohio statute, what limitations we can put on it. Mr. Iona, we've had conversations previously about 25% plus or minus.
Right.
I think to address the issue at hand, would be open for you guys placing a condition of approval on us that requires our HOA to limit rentals to a certain percentage. We're agreeable to 25%. No more than 25% of the units can be rented out.
I thought we established before that Ryan wasn't going to rent any of them.
They are.
Okay,
Ryan's not gonna rent them. I think the issue is when, after Ryan sells to a homeowner, there'll be 66 new homeowners in this community. And let's say one of the homeowners decides that they want to, they get transferred for a job somewhere, and they don't want to sell their townhome unit. They'd prefer to rent it out. They still have the ability to rent out
Okay.
their individual unit, but Ryan Homes will not be constructing all of these for the purposes of renting them out.
perhaps, Mr. Parlin, if you could clarify, how do the original documents of an HOA association get established?
So those documents, we create a new Ohio non-for-profit company, be its own entity, and we will draft a set of with collaboration from Ryan Homes as well as our attorneys, a set of covenants and restrictions for this community, which will set forth the rules and regulations by which all of the residents in this community have to live by. That'll be a recorded document put on record with the Hamilton County Recorder's Office. And so that protects if anyone transfers their unit, sells it, it's on record, it will come up in every title search. There will also be a set of bylaws that will establish how many officers there'll be, board members, the elections, when annual meetings are held. And those are created during the the development plan approval process. We usually don't draft them until we get closer or through a final development plan stage.
Okay. So if I understand it correctly, because I live in a HOA also, before the first townhome is sold, those documents have to be prepared. And as potential buyers come in, they have to be given a copy of it so they know what they're buying into.
Correct. It will be of record, recorded prior to a home being sold in this neighborhood.
Okay.
How do you police that? I mean, when you say 25%, that's roughly 16 homes that can be rented. How do you tell, one person, well, you can't rent yours this year because we already have 16 units that are being rented? I mean, that's just,
I've never done it before with metrics. I don't think it will happen in this case. I think if rentals happen, I know there's this fear of this community becoming a subsidized housing or an entirely rental neighborhood. Usually that happens when one owner owns a bunch of units, not when individual owners just decide to rent their unit out for whatever reason. We would have a property management company that would oversee the day-to-day operations of the association. All of our communities, we use Stonegate Property Management, which will be responsible for collecting all dues, assessments, doing inspections of the site, enforcing any violations, sending letters out to remedy those violations. They would probably have a better pulse on who's living there, not based upon who's paying the invoice for the annual dues.
Mr. Faring, that's why, excuse me, that's why there would be a board of this HOA who would meet with the property manager on a regular basis to go over those items and so forth. And at least in the two that I've been involved in, they can be amended, provided that whatever amendments are made are re-recorded through the county, the courthouse. Yeah. Okay, I think that was question number 3.
And then the fourth question was, would you be willing to provide additional information about work that you've done on other developments at some point prior to, the next step in this process?
Absolutely.
I think the young lady asked if that could be put on your website or something so they could access it? No?
I didn't say that. No.
Okay.
I think it should go out.
Well, ma'am, hold on. You're not being picked up by,
Let me go through, and there's a bunch of them we've done over the years, but that you can drive through if you.
okay. So when he finishes, then you can come back up and, okay. Anything else, Mr. Parlor?
No, sir.
Okay. Ma'am, if you'd like to come up and make your closing comment or what have you.
Thank you for answering those questions. No, I think that it should not just be for me. I think that the letter should come out from Mr. Ayala's office that Ryan Homes is the home builder and that they are the developer with that information enclosed. That way it's not just me, everyone will get it.
Okay.
And the last thing is, on HOA, as a realtor, one of the complaints that was about HPA was that they have too many seats on the boards of the HOA, so they still determine. That's the job of us, to make sure that our 25%, it doesn't have to be 25%. I've worked and sold where there are no investor properties. So that's our job as a township, not his, to protect ourselves. That's it.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Urbanzik, if you hear me, if you could send in the next speaker, please. Pl-
There's no other.
Was just you, because I have another name on the list here.
She came with me.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So if there are no more speakers, we need a motion to close public hearing.
I'll motion.
Second.
Bruce, you seconded?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Iona, could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, motion to close the public hearing. Vote, Commissioner Faring,
Yes.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Westfall,
Aye.
Commissioner Gehring,
Yes.
and Commissioner Grody.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So we've heard lots of information this evening. We've heard from one of our community residents. Commissioners, now is the time before we call for a motion. Are there any other questions, comments, discussion that we'd like to have with people present in the room or among ourselves?
I know the preference is a cut-through, but I believe the developer stated as well, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you would prefer having it as a cul-de-sac. Would you mind explaining to me the reasoning behind that?
Well, from a marketing perspective, obviously, to the extent you can eliminate a lot of cars coming through your street and you can create this enclave of townhomes, that would be preferable. People like living on cul-de-sacs, there's less traffic, right? So if on Street A, and then Grovewood, for what that proposed there becomes another cul-de-sac, you just have less cars coming through. Now, if that elimination of, if that connection warrants more, I guess, more roadway improvements, I don't think we'll ever get to a signal with 51 units, but
Right.
it could require some turn lane stuff dictated by the engineer. I guess this is the first time I've really thought about it, so you've kind of put me on the spot here a little bit, but I guess
Understand.
looking at it, I would prefer for it to be a cul-de-sac versus a connection. I think everything that we've ever done from a planning perspective is when there are existing stubs, you connect to them. It's just good planning. I'm not a planner by education, but in an urban infill site, which is what this is, it's surrounded by housing development on all four sides, and it's the last 8-acre piece of the puzzle, and you've got existing connections, you probably should connect them. So from a planning perspective, we just assume you make those connections. From a my little community and 66 lot development, I would be perfectly happy if that connection wasn't made.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have something to say about cul-de-sacs. They have just as much traffic as any other street, and you get it twice. They go up and turn around and come back. I live on a cul-de-sac. It's got 12 houses on it. And we got traffic all day long and all night long. And we have kids running out of the circle to get out of the way because they're playing baseball or something out there. So I have to disagree with that. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. In my experience, we've seen that you've got, there's no place to go but to the end and then back out. So unless you're getting lost or live on that area, or, you have delivery trucks and
Well,
stuff like that, but we've typically experienced a desire from our customers to want to live on cul-de-sacs.
If it is a cul-de-sac, sir, then I would assume at the entrance off of Springdale, the appropriate signage would be put there that this is a dead end or however it's stated on sign.
No outlet.
No outlet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ms. McMullen, just a couple of side comments regarding the cul-de-sac from my point of view. One of it is not a cul-de-sac. It's going to make it much easier for snow removal to go straight on through. Okay, secondly, if Northwest schools will bring a bus down there, I think they're going to really hesitate about bringing it down into two cul-de-sacs as of being able to come all the way down and go back out one other way.
True.
And if I was a owner in that development in the morning trying to get out, I think I'd be using that connection there to go to the traffic light to be able to get out, especially if a traffic signal isn't permitted at the entrance to the project.
Right.
You know, so there's pros and cons each way, you know.
There are, I agree.
All right, any other comments, questions? The question I placed to the commissioners before we ask for a motion is, are you comfortable with what you have been presented? And does it stay within the guidelines of all the various pieces of the zoning commission, zoning ordinances and so forth within Colerain Township? You don't need to answer that, but I want you to think about that. You know, are we doing what is the right thing? So if you wish to speak to that, you may. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion one way or the other from somebody for or disapproval, or however you want to state the motion.
I will speak to that. I think we've bent more rules than I've ever seen bent since I've been here in 5 years for development like this. We've bent setbacks, we've bent every rule in the book that we have here to try to make this development fit in this little tiny lot. So, I don't know, that's my own thoughts. So.
Any other comments? Okay, again, I will ask for a motion from somebody.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation for this development with the staff recommendations, i.e. with denial of the variance from the setback for off-street parking adjacent to Unit 15, such that staff can talk with the developers and come up with an alternative for those spots, and with one other condition, and that is that the developer provide the list that was requested by the resident well before, and that's well before the meeting in front of the trustees, so that the residents can review that before the presentation to the trustees.
That's something that, if that was to be approved, we could post online. So if that person's watching, we certainly would be able to post that in the now pending section of our.
Okay, so we have a motion. But let me get, if we don't get a second on this, it's not going anywhere, okay? So it's been moved to approve this project as, if I may, Mr. Gehring, to say it this way, as has been presented by staff in its entirety, with one additional caveat in that list of, say it again.
The list of projects
Projects, yes.
that was requested by the resident be provided in the very near future, well before the trustees meeting.
Okay. Now, do I have a second to that motion?
May I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Am I able to encourage another condition?
Well,
If I encourage it and he adds it?
Mr. Chairman, I think that you can get the second and then there's discussion, and then you can go back and amend that motion.
Let's-
So
Thank you.
if you get the second, there's certainly discussion, at which point amendments can be requested.
so is there a second to the motion on the floor?
I'll second.
Okay. Now, let's open it for discussion.
I would love to also add the concern, because it is a very fair concern. We do live in a neighborhood that is becoming a very high rate of rental properties. Granted, the majority of them are single-family housing, but I do share her concern of these, maybe not in the first couple of years, but in subsequent years, becoming rental properties. I would love to have a condition that limits a little bit more stricter than 25%. The number that keeps going in my head, Mr. Faring mentioned 16 homes. Somewhere around 10, you know, if 10 out of the 66 lots were rentals, that seems a little bit fair to me. So I would like to put, I don't know what that percentage works out to be in my head. I'm not good at math without a calculator in front of me.
That comes out to 15.15%, so 15%.
So 15%
15%, according to my calculator.
added into the HOA agreement for the rental occupations.
My calculator would also confirm the 15%.
Thank you.
Okay, before I ask another question, I have to ask Mr. Iona. Can that specific provision be added to this? Is that
put that
under
in.
our purview?
Yes, we can put that in.
Okay,
I've seen that condition put in before.
okay.
I agree
So-
with that.
Thank you.
So I was going to go back to you, Mr. Gehring, and say you made the initial motion with the one caveat of the projects being published, and now with the second caveat of no more than 15% rentals be entered into the HOA agreement.
That's correct.
You agree with that?
I do.
Okay. You made that caveat. You obviously agree with it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to bring up the landscape condition, and I know it's been a while since our discussion on that previously. The current condition talks about that additional landscape, and the applicant has stated that they want to put landscape in, and they want to do a great job of buffering this site. You know, would it be possible to amend that condition that staff put in there, that, you know, the applicant come back with a landscape plan at the final development stage, if it's approved, that sufficiently addresses preservation of existing open space, preservation of existing tree canopy, and then the addition of landscape where appropriate to ensure that there's proper screening from the surrounding areas.
Okay. Does everybody understand what Mr. Iona is proposing?
Yes.
So I come back to you, Mr. Gehring, you made the motion, or are you willing to accept that?
Yes, I think that's fine.
Okay. Ms. McMullen?
Agreed.
Okay, so now we have three caveats we're putting in, and do you have enough on your recorder to pick all of that up for the minutes purposes?
Yes.
Okay. Any other final discussion? Mr. Iona, could you call the roll, please,
Calling the roll on the
on the motion?
motion at hand. Commissioner Faring,
No.
Commissioner McMullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Westphal,
Nay,
Commissioner Gehring,
Yes,
Commissioner Grody.
Yes,
Motion passes 3-2.
motion is passed. Okay? What is your projected start time? Sir, come to the microphone, please. Question is, what is your projected start time?
We believe it'll be second quarter of next year. Probably later May, June timeframe is realistic.
Okay,
Next steps on this development application is that it does go, this is a recommendation that is made to the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees will hold a public hearing at their next, at the next date in accordance with the zoning resolution. There'll be a public hearing, and then they will take final action on this development plan to either deny or approve with modifications to the recommendation that's been made here tonight. If that is approved, then the next step is that final development plan process that we saw for Lake Gloria today, where the applicant comes back in and would submit a plan that satisfies the conditions contained within the preliminary development plan, as well as kind of susses out all the fine details of the site.
okay. Gentlemen, thank you for coming, and happy holidays to all. Okay, continuing on with the agenda, I notice in items 6, 7, and 8, informal concept review, old business and new business. Is there anything to be addressed there, Mr. Iona?
There is nothing to be addressed.
Okay, administration, Mr. Iona?
There is nothing to be addressed. I will make the announcement that the next meeting will be, is scheduled tentatively for January, where we plan to bring the amended version, final version of the massage parlor regulations before all of you. And we're looking forward to also potentially having some comprehensive plan issues to discuss at that meeting. But then again, that is tentative, and we will reach out to you all as early as possible to confirm via telephone.
Okay. I'm not sure if Mr. Urbanzik can hear us or not, but I think all of you may have seen at some place or another that Mr. Urbanzik has been named a new development officer, is his new title, I think it is.
Correct.
Development officer, so we wish him well. And this is his last meeting. He'll be working with us as the zoning commission, so we wish him well. And will somebody else be helping you?
We will continue to move forward. Yeah, we will have help. Yep.
Okay, all right. Next meeting is tentatively in January,
Correct.
tentatively.
That is correct.
All right. Commissioners, I will not be here for that meeting. However, I would like to offer for you to consider me for any position of office with this commission if you so deem so. But we won't, my wife and I won't be in it, we'll be out of town. So if you feel I can serve in any capacity as an officer, I'd be willing to do so. Before we adjourn, wish happy holidays to all here present and to all who are tuning in this evening. And hope you have a great holiday, and let's hope this pandemic ceases soon with the new vaccine.
Yes.
Okay, could we have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Okay. I think we can just simply do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I guess nobody wants to stay tonight, huh? Okay. Thank you, everybody, and if
I hope we can all get shots, or at least be offered shots before.
Meeting adjourns at 8:06.